On behalf of County Chairman Bob Fornow, I'd like to welcome you all here and thank you for coming. My name is Don Baum, and I'm standing in for Bob today. He volunteered me for that. Bob's pretty good at volunteering people. But anyway, we have some distinguished guests here today, and before I get to our number one guest here, I want to recognize the candidates we have here. Scott Cooper, candidate for Commissioner, Precinct 4, Bradley Stringer, JP, Precinct 3, is that right? Yes, sir. Okay. And two that are more, I think Donnie Puckett couldn't be here today, is that right? Oh, okay. All right. All right, well, we have our distinguished guest here today, and he's been in Republican politics for 38 years, even though he doesn't look like it, and he's sort of dedicated his life to that, I guess. We just elected him to the position that he holds now, which is chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, at our convention in June in Dallas. So please welcome Steve Munisteri.
Well, good afternoon. I am Steve Munisteri, State Chairman of the Republican Party of Texas. We are here today in Lufkin as part of the Republican Party of Texas Texas Truth Tour. And what that is a series of press conferences and press events around the state. This is our third stop, where we are visiting specific House districts and congressional districts where we believe there's some information about the Democratic incumbent or challenger, as the case may be, that we think that the people of that particular district should be made aware of and should be publicized, especially where it's dealing with issues where we believe there have been some misrepresentations made to the voters. We're here today in House District 12 because we believe Mr. Jim McReynolds has been representing himself to be a representative of House District 9, when in fact he's a resident of House District, representative of House District 12, when in fact he's a representative of House District 9. And this is just not wild speculation. A revitalized Republican Party of Texas has been able to put the resources towards spending a considerable amount of time on opposition research as well as investigations. And so we've had investigators looking into the residency of Mr. McReynolds, and we believe we've conclusively established, as a result of a number of items, that Mr. McReynolds just simply is not qualified to be the state representative. He's not qualified from the standpoint of the Texas Constitution, but we also think he's not qualified from a trust point of view with the voters of this district. So you've been handed a packet, and what we will do is I will go over with you the items in this packet, which we think conclusively establish that Mr. McReynolds is not qualified to be the state representative from this area. Now, we have some blow-ups here of some of the items in your packet, if you'll turn that around. The first is just to point out that the Texas Constitution requires him to live in the district in order for him to represent the district. So if we establish that his residency is not in the district, he is somebody that is ineligible for this particular office. Now, above the Constitution blow-up, we have a very interesting document here that we've obtained, and this is a document from Mr. McReynolds. It's a blow-up of him signing in back in the spring of 2010. And the significance, by the way, of the date is it's within 1 year of the election. So as you see, the Constitution down there requires that he live in the district for at least the year before the election. And yet there's a sign-in sheet in April of 2010, which is within that year, that indicates that Mr. McReynolds does not live in the district within the last 12 months. Now, what's interesting about this particular document is you don't have to take our word for him not living in the district. This is a document that's actually filled out by Mr. Jim McReynolds. And if you notice, when he signed in and they asked him where he lived, he put his St. Augustine address. Now, there's a problem with that address, as you'll see in the go ahead and move the next one. There's a problem, and that is that if you look at the map, which we have blown up here, the St. Augustine address, the area that's marked in red around there is actually the parameters of the current district. So we put in the address that Mr. McReynolds says he lives at. And when you do that, you do a blow-up, you see this is not a matter of somebody missing it by a few feet or living across the street from the district. This is a person that clearly doesn't live in the district, not even by a long shot. The other thing that's interesting is he lists for his official residence this apartment that we have a blow up of, and this apartment is at 3205 Old Union Road here in Lufkin. This is where he's telling the voters of this district, and he's certifying to them that he lives there. Now, there's something interesting here. We did not put the white sign there. I want to make that clear. The Republican Party of Texas did not put a sign of his opponent in his apartment. But when our investigators went by, we noticed that somebody, probably as a prank, had put a white sign in his apartment. The interesting thing is the investigators were there for days, and that white sign was still there. So that can lead to only one of two conclusions. Either Mr. McReynolds agrees that Mr. White would be by far a better state representative, or Mr. McReynolds obviously doesn't live where he says he lives, or he would have removed the sign of his opponent. And I think it's something else interesting to note is, and we'll talk about later, is when you're trying to determine where somebody really lives, you know, would they be living in a house or would they be living in an apartment if they had two of them? Now, in the next blow-up, we have actual surveillance of the home, which he listed in St. Augustine as his residence on the form for the school board meeting. And you can see that this really does look like his home, doesn't it? It's got his cars out front. It has the license plates. And again, you would notice that you're dealing with a home that, if you we move to the next one, is listed as his homestead. And he does not list any property within the district which he says he represents as being his homestead. And if you notice down on the blow-up, we have the Texas tax code, which says that if you are going to designate a place as a homestead, it's got to be your principal residence. So Mr. McReynolds has filed under the law a declaration through his homestead that, in fact, the St. Augustine address is his principal residence. It's not on a blow-up, but we have it in your packet, something that I think is very interesting. I wish we had blown this one up. And that is, you can go to the Texas website and find out who your representative is. Well, we thought it would be fun to put in where Mr. McReynolds' homestead is and where the pictures that show he lives to see who pops up as his state representative. Well, it turns out that Mr. Reynolds, when you go to the Texas House website, his state representative is Wayne Christian. So we just suggested to him that if he really wishes to have an impact in Austin, he needs to go to the website, get the phone number for Representative Christian, and call him and give him his opinion. But he should not represent the people of this district, because some questions I think that should be asked of him, and I think the media should ask of him, and one of the reasons why we're here on the Texas Truth Tour is hopefully to get the answer to these questions in a truthful way. Why doesn't he live in the district? What's wrong with the people of this district that you don't want to live among the people that you represent? Second thing I would ask him is, what's the purpose of that apartment? Why do you even have it? You don't live there. It's a rented place. You've got a nice house 30 miles away. And I think the answer to that question, you'll find, is the only reason that there is an apartment is to get around the residency requirements and to mislead the people. There seems to be no other purpose than to create a false impression. There's some other questions I think the media should ask him. How often does he stay at the apartment he says he lives in? Another question would be to him would be, or I would just say this, using common sense when you're trying to determine what is his real residence, isn't it more likely that somebody is living as a residence in a home they own rather than an apartment they rent? It just doesn't make any sense that that would be your home when you don't own it. It's smaller. It's not as nice. And finally, the final question that I would ask the media, and I'd ask all voters out there to ask themselves before, or ask Mr. Reynolds before they vote for him, is does Mr. McReynolds think he's above the law? Isn't he sworn to uphold our Constitution, and doesn't our Constitution for the state of Texas require he live there? And to ask Mr. McReynolds, does he believe a state representative should live in the district in which he represents, the district where the people he represents are? That's all I have to say formally. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Either folks have any questions?
How long have y'all been investigating or looking into this?
A little less than 30 days.
And what sparked you guys to start looking into this?
There were allegations in the past that he did not live in the district, so we've been looking at all state representatives who we've acquired information. As I say, this is a part of a series of press conferences. This is our third stop on similar issues, and we're going to have some more surprises later this week and early next week.
As the documentation is filed, is it legal or is it simply frowned upon?
Well, you're not supposed to file a homestead unless it's your principal residence. So let me put it this way. It is totally legal for Mr. McReynolds to file a homestead in St. Augustine County because he actually lives in St. Augustine style. The thing that's not lawful is representing, is trying to represent people from this district when you don't live there, because we don't. Our Texas Constitution requires that he lives there. By the way, there's another piece of evidence that's in your packet that I didn't have a blow up, which you reminded me of, which is on his personal financial statement that he filed with the state. And what made me think about this is it is required that you file accurate reports, and the St. Augustine property is listed there as property he owns. I think that Mr. McReynolds has two major problems. One, he's not eligible for this office. You are not eligible to be a state representative under our state constitution unless you have lived in the state of Texas for 2 years, and I'll grant him he's lived in the state of Texas for 2 years. But more importantly, you have to live in the district that you purport to represent for 12 months before the election. Well, the election's November 2nd, 2010. So he needs to have lived lived here within the district since November of 2009, and we know from his own document in front of the school board that he didn't live in this district in the spring of this year. So Mr. McReynolds simply is not eligible under the Texas Constitution to hold this office. So that's one issue, the legal issue. But there's also the political issue, which is I think the voters need to know that he's been representing, that he lives among them, that he meets the requirements, that he files papers that says that his home is in the apartment, and it's clearly not. He doesn't live there. He's not there. Again, unless you think he supports James White and decided to put a sign out in his house.
Is this kind of the common practice of other representatives that you guys have seen in your investigation?
Well, we have found a minimum of 3 Democratic state representatives who we believe clearly are ineligible for office and have been representing to their constituencies. They live in their district when they do not. There's another 2 or 3 that we let me rephrase what I said. There's at least 3 Democratic representatives that we believe we have conclusive evidence, almost indisputable evidence, that they're not eligible for their offices. And there's a good 3 or 4 others that we don't believe they live in their districts, but we're not prepared to say that publicly until we can get similar documentation. Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for attending, and I'll be happy to hang around if anybody has any questions later.